All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our CQ advocacy webinar, Get 'em in the Districts. Sounds a little kind of aggressive, but it's pretty timely given that we're coming up to recess in a fairly short time period. I think the House goes on recess on July 26th and then the Senate on August 3rd. So a couple of weeks out, really. Well, a couple of months, I guess, for the Senate, but things are kind of certainly getting close, and so this topic is very timely. Just to refresh you, we are CQ Advocacy here. We have 5 products: CQ Ignite, CQ Engage, which are our advocacy platforms; CQ Knowledgeist, which is our congressional directory; CQ Advocate Acquisition, which is our digital advertising product; and then CQ Converge, which is our Hill Day app or event app. And we also have CQ Connectivity, which is our resource center for all things government relations and best practices related. So check that out, please, if you haven't already. I'm joined today by 3 great panelists. First of all, we've got Joshua Habursky. Josh is the Assistant Vice President of Advocacy at the Independent Community Bankers of America, and of course, he's the Chairman of the Grassroots Professional Network. Delighted to have Jordan Craig here for the first time. Jordan is the Director of Grassroots Program Development at the American Farm Bureau Federation, and he specializes in training advocates to build effective relationships with elected officials and constituents through in-person and digital engagement tactics. So very apt person to talk today about in-district meetings and getting all that kind of good in-district constituent things and stuff going. And then finally, we've got Megan McCoskey. Megan is our Advocacy Product Manager for CQ here, and she works closely with nonprofits and trade associations and corporate clients to help them leverage the tools to make the most of their advocacy platform. So 3 great speakers today, and I think we're going to start with Josh. So over to you, Josh.
Thank you very much, Anne. Excited to be here. I'm taking notes this time. I'm ready to hear what Jordan has to say so that we can steal his ideas and get them going in our program. But this is, as you mentioned, a very timely topic. And there's no really one-size-fits-all approach to this. I think in the 3 national associations that I've been involved with, the Motorcyclist Association, Diabetes Association, and now the Independent Community Bankers of America, we've had a different in-district strategy because you have to scale your resources, and I'll talk a little bit about that. For this agenda for the webinar, we're going to talk about localizing content, stretching resources, maximizing the effectiveness of timing, leveraging state and local contacts, and creating programs to ensure in-district activities. And then I'll kick it over to Jordan to talk about the American Farm Bureau Federation and his case study and apply some of these themes together. And then hopefully we'll have a conversation with Megan and Jordan and I about some of the tips and tricks, and we'll answer any questions that you may have. So, localizing content, I think, is important when it comes to in-district strategy. Having the resources available online and then in person that is applicable to the state and the congressional district. So having district-level data and profiles. And you'll utilize this not only in the in-district meetings, but this should be a core piece or a core document for any of your fly-ins that you have in Washington, D.C. This information will get used and used again by staff. If you're a larger organization that has a heavy presence in the congressional district, getting the numbers in front of the member of Congress and their staff are important to show the power of your organization and also showcase the impact that it has across sections. So like for our profiles, you can get it for the entire state, district to district, compare and contrast between the different districts, and that's all available on our website. But we send that out to folks, anybody that comes into D.C. for our fly-in, but also if they have an in-district meeting scheduled. That's part of the packet that I provide for the advocates before they go to their meeting. So define the footprint and impact. Showcase information routinely. So, your communications calendar shouldn't start on August 1st or just a few days before the recess actually occurs. And even if the recess isn't occurring, you should be able to put together information to have in-district meetings or visits during the time when the member of Congress isn't in Washington, D.C. On our website, and I'm sure websites across advocacy associations, you can see the calendars of when Congress is in session. It doesn't have to be clustered into August to have in-district meetings or to have site visits. So we encourage community bankers throughout the year to meet with members of Congress in the district to showcase their community banks, and also meet with staff that are at the district level. If you're having trouble getting a hold or getting a meeting in Washington, D.C., having the district director or somebody that's local can be a good way to get an introduction to that congressional office. And they're more accessible. A lot of times you can go to a district office and not even have an appointment and meet with somebody that is a staffer that can affect policy outcomes and send it to the right people. So I think that's often overlooked by a lot of advocacy organizations, and for the smaller associations, this is something that they should definitely exploit and use. Some of these district offices will have scheduled coffees, like every Wednesday we have open office hours from 12 to 3. Have an advocate pop in for 15 minutes and share that localized content with them to get the information there. This is just another example. The International Franchise Association, I know that they do some work with Morning Consult to process their data and information, and I think it's incredibly valuable to have the ability to toggle those local resources and see that. This is something that is a great tool for members, so have it member-facing, but also for congressional staff. In terms of scaling and resources, 535 can be too much when you're talking about the August recess itself and condensing it into 1 month. So it's important to target and prioritize. Set internal attainable goals, and I really highlight attainable goals because obviously you want to meet with all 100 senators, all 435 House members, but in reality, they aren't going to have the time to meet with you, and you're not going to have the time to set all of that up, especially if you're a one-person grassroots shop, which I know we have a webinar coming up on that topic. I'll save the commentary for a later date on that. But visits, tours, and events, these can be labor-intensive to put together, but you can concentrate your power on energy on a few of these to make them worthwhile. So in our organization, I'm always looking for the case study that we can do an event and put on a site visit, a community bank visit that's truly a community event where several people come together, customers, employees, remarks are given by an elected official, and the bank is showcased in that in a favorable light. And I'm looking for that case study to build out as an example that I can teach, the saying, teach people how to fish rather than catch the fish for them. And that's really the goal there. If you can come up with a case study or a templated example to send to your advocates where they can do to themselves, then it becomes less labor intensive, and then you're more of an advisor rather than a functionary putting all the pieces together. I think it's important when you can to couple House and Senate visits when possible. So if you're doing a site visit or a tour during the August recess or a meeting, stagger them. So if you have two elected officials of different parties, have a window of time so they're not speaking at the same time. But oftentimes, if they're of the same party, having them together is a great way to showcase both of them, and they're willing because they have working relationships with one another. As I mentioned before, it's more than just August at this point. I think that looking at the calendar, there's going to be different events. Also leverage PAC and grassroots, for check presentations. I think that's important. Attending fundraisers doesn't always have to be done by your federal lobbying team, having a strong advocate present a check to a member of Congress in district, and this can be done during the August recess. It's a perfect time for that. You have a lot of summer barbecue fundraisers, fishing trips, stuff like that. Really having your advocates at that rather than professional staff can be a tool to utilize. Timing, as I mentioned, it really requires a lot of advanced planning. August 1st isn't the time to build a strategy. We've started planning already for August recess 2 weeks out. 2 weeks from now, this point forward. So we're definitely focused in on that. Resources to schedule meetings. I like to put a packet together, which in another slide I have the cover of it. A letter, an introduction letter to schedule the actual meeting, the contact info for the appropriate staff member, and this should be in district as well as the scheduler in Washington, D.C. Media and social media resources so that the meeting doesn't just happen in a vacuum, that there's really a presence that's out there. If you have a visit, a community bank visit, the local media outlets should certainly be alerted. If you have a general meeting in the office, take a picture, tweet it out, work with the communications folks of the congressional office so that they retweet it or repost it to really amplify the reach of that. Follow-up resources, if you have a set of legislative priorities, and I know we did this last year, we have our main legislative priorities, we have our Lobby Day fly-in card, but then we sent out an amended version for August recess specifically where it was an abbreviated, here's our top 3 points, this is the message that we want to get across. So, in the recess or in the in-district time, it's not as strenuous as your fly-in where you have so many people coming to D.C. and you have to worry about cancellations and, how many lunch settings you have to have. So you really can take your time and focus in on that and make sure that the meetings are, quality and you get those 3 points across to folks. So if you have to schedule a few prep calls for your key contacts and your key advocates, do so because, again, that time and energy will translate in pay dividends in the future. Also make sure that you have a reporting mechanism set up so you know how these meetings went. I think, I've seen before where messages get sent out to folks, here's your resources, the meetings take place, they do everything on social media, the press is contacted, and it's fantastic. But then that information isn't relayed back to Washington, D.C. or wherever your main base of operation is located, and that message isn't received by the federal lobbying team, so they can't do follow-ups. They can't make the direct ask and follow up on that. So make sure you have a reporting mechanism so that it's easy to use, allowing people to enter who they met with, how the meeting went, whether they were able to get their talking points across. You might even want to ask if you were able to deliver the leave behinds and if those were received. Coordination, I think it's also important to work with the local and state affiliates. So if you are a federated organization, if you're not working with your state chapters, they're scheduling these meetings already. So, where and when you can coordinate efforts, I think that you're able to produce better events and sometimes share resources to put those together. Local key contacts that you have in your database, they should be consulted when it comes to these type of meetings. Is it better to do a meeting at the district office, or is it better to do a bank tour, or is it better to attend a town hall meeting? What is the best setting? What resonates? And what is the relationship level of those key contacts? And then, of course, feedback, so that you're sharing information with your local and state affiliates. The intel that is shared between those different entities will be important in the long run for an overall advocacy and government relations strategy. So I also mentioned programs in here. I think that it's best to set up a routine. A lot of times different organizations will have a check-in. So August recess is basically the check-in after your fly-in. If you have a spring fly-in, August is the follow-up. If you didn't get what you need to get done, this is the time where your advocates need to come back home to the district and say, hey, I'm waiting for this action to be taken care of. So, setting that as a routine program, some people will actually name these August recess fly-ins something creative after their organization or something symbolic. I know other organizations will present awards, and a lot of times August recess is a perfect opportunity. I highlighted here the National Association of Home Builders and their Defender of Housing Award in the slide here. Of course, the programs for check presentations. So if you work with your PAC director or your PAC vice president, and they have a goal of 60, 70 check presentations, that is a defined goal that you can have and a program that's built in that year to year you want to increase, you want to do more, or strategically evaluate. Get the member to come to you. I think that especially in an election year, people want to be seen at these different venues, sitting next to the folks of the American Farm Bureau, sitting next to folks, in a community bank, to showcase that they're involved, they're active in their communities, and they're out to get votes. And being with influential people that impact the community is important to them. So get them to come to you and showcase your ability to bring those folks together. And then others will actually go on tour where, our roles, Jordan, our position is mainly on the road in August, going from place to place to place to assist in that. And I think that some of those are being built in as programs where, a few years ago, it might be, all right, send it out. We hope we get 5 or 6 meetings at the end of the day. We put all these resources together, but now it's kind of, well, we need to ensure that these meetings take place, so let's get boots on the ground. Let's have our, maybe our membership person or maybe our state relations person assist with this, and that seems to be a trend that I'm noticing in grassroots overall. I'll turn it over to Jordan to give us some words of wisdom.
Thanks, Josh. So Farm Bureau is a federated structure, and one of the reasons why our in-district events and meetings are so successful is because we empower our advocates to do these meetings. We're working with our state associations. We're working with our local affiliates to make all of this happen. So just really quick, a little bit about us. We have members in all 50 states, and so we are, our goal is always to have in-district meetings, and we'll talk a little bit about the targets behind some of those goals. One of the reasons why they're successful is because we created toolkits for our members on how to put on these in-district events. Now, I will say August is the time that we always think about as great as we've mentioned earlier, but any time the member is back home in the district is a great time to meet with them because they always want to be seen. They always want to know that they want their constituents to know that they're available to them. So we create toolkits that have the different things in them. Here's your members. Here's some of the issues. Here are the things you can talk about. Here's who to contact in the member of Congress's office. Here's who to contact in the local media. Here's who to contact at the American Farm Bureau or the state association if you have questions about something. We always encourage our members to do request in-district meetings with them. That's really easy. We encourage them to conduct issue forums, especially during election year, like members of Congress want to talk about those things. 10 town halls, drafting op-eds and letters to the editors. They're all reading the paper. They're looking for their names. They want to see what their constituents are talking about, and so those are a great way to communicate and get with them. I didn't put on there this, but we also encourage them to do farm tours, or some people may refer to them as site visits. You know, they don't have to be elaborate. It can be as easy as just coming by and maybe you take an hour to show them around and what it is that you do and how a particular piece of legislation is going to impact that business. So it doesn't, you don't have to have everything super clean. It doesn't have to be, all lights and camera, but letting them see what it's really like to be there day to day. And I would argue that you could probably get more success out of that site visit, them seeing people in a normal working environment than otherwise than putting on a show. One thing that we have our members do too is we have them share. We have them share with us, share on social media, share with the local people, share with their friends, some of the things that they're doing, and talk about the member back in the district. This works both ways because the member loves seeing their name out there, but also other people are seeing what's going on, and they want to know how they can be involved and be a part of this. Again, I think all of this comes down to is about the people. You can have a great event and you can have this well orchestrated and all this great stuff, but if you don't have the people there helping you do it, or the people who want to do it, then it's not going to be a success. We can't be in every place all the time, and so we have to empower our advocates to do some of these things themselves. Now, here's how to make your dream a reality. The first thing is you have to define a goal, and that goal is different for every district or every recess period. The goal could be we need to get this legislation passed. The goal could be we just need to get the name of our organization out there with that member in their stack. But you as an organization has to determine what that goal is going to be for them. The next thing is to identify targets. We ideally would like to have in-district meetings in every district when they're in recess, but the reality is that's not going to happen. So sometimes you need to identify those targets. This is a district that could be a problem in the future, or this is a district that's a problem right now, and so we need to focus a lot of resources and a lot of time on taking care of this particular recess period. Framing the issue around what your member cares about is really, that goes both ways. Framing the issue around what your member of Congress cares about, but also what your advocate cares about. The most successful visits are when the people who are your advocates who are having these meetings and meeting with these legislators, when they want to be there, when they're passionate about it, those work really well. And then having access to resources. We give our advocates access to these resources, the things that they need. We're a resource for them, and letting them know where to go, where to get questions, instead of just kind of not doing it because they don't know what to do or trying to make it up on their own. What are your assets? What is going to help you the most? We have a lot of groups have people that are local on the ground that can help you, and a lot of times we don't utilize them, so it's just a matter of getting them all together to make you go. Building momentum can be really hard, but planning is definitely one of the things that help build that momentum. You can't start on July 30th and make a plan for in-district meetings on August 1st and expect them to be great. Maybe they will work, and that would be perfect, but in reality is you need to plan this well in advance and be talking with people, getting on their schedules and their calendar. August is also a hard time because people are getting ready to go back to school or going back to school, and so you have to think about your advocates in the district and meeting with those members of Congress. Are they available? Are they in last-minute vacation? Are they busy? What's going on? And so we want to make sure we're part of this process, and we want to build momentum about we're getting ready to do this. Come be a part of this. Help us out with this. And then, as Josh said, you have to have a reporting mechanism for it. So encourage them to report back what's going on. Social media has made that really easy to follow along when you can't be there, but sometimes you need more details than just pictures and tweets. So being able to report back to you so you can kind of compile and read what's going on is really great, and an easy way for them to do that as well. But also reporting the successes out to everybody. So if you get a really great feedback, sharing that with everyone who did industry meetings. so-and-so did this, and this is what happened, and this is why it was really great. Announce the results. Recognize people who took the time to be a part of this. Those are all things that get people really engaged and make them want to be a part of it again in the future. At the end of the day, we want them to be we want the member of Congress to be on our team, and we want the advocate to relay that message and that story for us. And so making sure that there's a lot of planning and a lot of things done really well is going to help that process and help you have a successful in-district meeting, not just in August, but any time of the year that you have it.
So as Ann mentioned, I work with nonprofits and corporations and trade associations here at CQ to help them execute their advocacy goals using our digital advocacy software. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use digital advocacy tools to fuel these initiatives after you've defined your goals and created your resources, how you can get people to show up. So the examples I'll be using are our tool, CQ Engage, but hopefully whatever tools you have will give you the resources to execute them as well. If not, we should talk. So what you'll do is you'll start with a cadence that makes it more approachable. And so in this case, I've created a landing page for in-district meetings, but I've also used direct outreach to move my advocates through the process. So I like to start with a pledge. And so the pledges are nice because it's an easy ask. Getting someone to give me their name and their email address and their zip code is a couple of clicks for them, whereas having them sign up for a meeting right away is kind of a big deal. Once I get them to pledge, they're more likely to follow through when I follow up with them. They've made their pledge, it's their word, it's psychologically in all of our brains, and we're more likely to take that next step. After I've signed up, I have my resources from you. You can give them tools to help them schedule time when they'll be able to see their members, and what we'll do is using CQ Engage, target the district office, have them call, find out what type of meeting they want to do. They could find out when their upcoming town halls are, arrange a site visit, arrange a more formal meeting, and report back to you on the details of that call. And so you can set these up to come directly to your inbox when your advocates complete these forms, and of course report on them later so that you can follow up. After we've had those meetings, as Josh and Jordan both noted, it's really important to have your members report back to you on how those meetings went. You won't be in all places at all times, so you're using them as your advocates in a physical way instead of in the digital way that you typically would using our tools. So you can collect basic information on how and when that meeting went, what office it was with, who they met with, as well as any type of custom information that you'd like. And that, of course, will get sent back to your inbox and also available for you to report on later. Now, once they've scheduled these meetings and followed up and followed through and shown up physically for you in these district offices, it's great to remember that you have access to these people and you know that they're the type of people who are ready to show up for you. So follow up with them, let them know how all of the entire campaign went, all of the district visits, as Jordan mentioned, pull out some great experiences that people had, share that among the group that you've already created using the digital advocacy tools, and know that you can go back to them year after year to show up for you in the future. It's an easier ask to get them to come along. So I think we are going to go to questions now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you mentioned that kind of follow-up, Megan, because I know we have some clients who find this is a great way to kind of tie their grassroots to their lobbyists in Washington, and I think that idea of the follow-up and kind of taking notes and you know, if a lobbyist, if they had a particularly great meeting at the district, that the lobbyist knows that happened and they can go in next year or later on that year and kind of refer to that, and it helps to build all those relationships, which of course is really important. I did want to ask, what if you're not a terribly influential group? Maybe you don't have a big presence here in DC or a big presence in the States, how do you get on their radar? How do you try and get your meeting? How do you get your on-site district meeting if you're a small, say, nonprofit who doesn't have that kind of clout? How do you get their attention?
I would say start small, like, getting a meeting with a staff person at the district level should be fairly easy to do. They have representatives that are there to assist with that in constituent services. So, scheduling a meeting, work your way up. Eventually, if you have a positive meeting with the first staff person, even if it's a staff assistant, you can then leverage that and follow up and build a rapport with that office where, eventually down the line you're meeting with a member of Congress in Washington, D.C. or in the district. So I think that engaging and not being afraid and really taking away the whole moniker of not being influential. Anybody can be influential. As a private citizen, you can be influential in the democratic process. That's the way that it's built. So, there are different avenues and different strategies and techniques that you have to apply. I think that, larger organizations, there's also a different model that you have to apply. But definitely get out there and meet with some people, tell your story, and get the point across to people.
Yeah, I would also say look at some non-traditional ways of engaging, and letters to the editors, op-eds, posts on Medium or wherever, different things to kind of talk about your issue that represents, that says what your organization is and what they do, and maybe target that at the legislator a little bit. Those are things that get their attention and can help, depending on how they're done, can help you get a meeting, in-person meeting with them.
And I'm just piggybacking off that, if you are writing a letter to the editor or an op-ed and the member of Congress has taken a favorable position to what you have, thank them. Chances are if you write an op-ed that thanks them about something, their office is going to contact you. You're not going to have to contact them. And then you're going to have your foot in the door for a meeting.
Mm-hmm. On a practical level, we know that if someone's visiting the Hill, there's a lot of kind of logistics in terms of you can't bring a big group in. It's probably going to be a very small room. You're going to have a very tight time frame in order to get a meeting in place. You may not even meet the member of Congress, right? So in the district, presumably there's more scope, particularly on an on-site visit. You can maybe bring in a crowd. You can bring in folks that you might not have been able to bring in. What are kind of some of those kind of practical things that you have an opportunity at a district level that you mightn't have on the Hill that maybe you can work?
Well, definitely in the district, you can bring a member of Congress to you. If that's your civic organization meeting or your site visit or your employees or whatever it is, they're more willing to come to you. So it's easier to have one person come there versus taking 50 people somewhere. I also think another pro is the timing is a little different because in Washington things are really busy. So you miss the meeting, you may not get on the schedule for another month. Whereas if something comes up in the district, they may be able to move things around, or you can kind of move the meeting to meet at a different location and be a little more flexible.
I also think that, in-district meetings are a little less intimidating for your advocates. I mean, I remember going back years now when I was in college, I was an intern in a district office, and we were at a bus terminal. And so it's not intimidating at all. You could walk in without an appointment, as I mentioned, and end up getting a meeting. Every Wednesday we had MoveOn.org and about 50 people from MoveOn.org there protesting. We received report cards. People really engaged, and the local media would pick that up. I mean, that was the talk of the town, like protest at Congressman so-and-so's office. And, I'm not suggesting that that's the most effective ways, but, I think that it's certainly less intimidating for people to, engage with elected officials at that level than it is going through security and having to go and just the intimidation factor of going on Capitol Hill. I mean, if you're somebody that's never been to Washington, D.C. before and never met with your member of Congress, that first time is scary. And our roles, we have to kind of take away that fear and say, you know what, it's easy, it's a process. This is you're not meeting. They're celebrities in their own right, but don't be afraid to just speak freely and tell your story. So the in-district route certainly has the opportunity to allow your advocates to feel more comfortable in their own setting.
Yeah, I also say it's less intimidating for the member of Congress, too, because they're back home, they're in the district, they know the area, they typically know some of the people that's in your group. And if you're inviting them to come to your meeting, to your place, then you probably have somewhat of a good relationship or some rapport there, and so they're not worried about who's going to come into my meeting and accuse me of something. And so they feel more comfortable as well.
I'm glad you mentioned kind of the media aspect too, and coming from a journalism background and coming from small papers up through kind of national papers, at a local level, folks are really trying to find a story, and it's harder to find a story. And of course, their congressperson is a story all the time, so you're much more likely to kind of, I think, garner some attention for a lot of the things that you never would. You're not going to get much attention for a meeting with a congressperson in Washington, D.C. It's not exactly big news, but if you're an organization that has, particularly if you maybe employ people in a district, you're certainly going to have much more scope to kind of get attention that way. I think that's about it. Thanks to both Josh and Jordan for coming along today, and to Megan for joining us. Hope everybody listening learned something. We will be sending you out the recording after this webinar, so watch out for that email either later today or tomorrow, and look forward to you joining us next time. Thank you.